My name is Ani Ward, and I work for Taos Ski Valley. I'm also the coordinator of Taos Ski Valley Speaker Series program. We just finished our third season of programming. Weekly lectures. Check our events calendar this summer. We're going to have an exciting lineup. If you're wondering, yeah, great. If you wonder what these weekly lectures are about, we've invited biologists, artists, Taos School of Music, local celebrities, some of them are here on our panel, our beloved avalanche dogs. And this evening, the speaker series is working in collaboration with Taos Ski Valley's Heritage History Project. In a moment, I'll introduce Peter Tulte, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. Right now, I would like to introduce you to what a group. Can we have a hand for this group? We have Rick Richards, Walter Roog, Mickey Blake, Elizabeth Brownell, Max Killinger, Jean Maillet, and Dadu Maillet. And our moderator is George Brooks, right here, Executive Director of Ski New Mexico. I want you to take a moment to look around the room. We're surrounded by new friends and old, neighbors, co-workers, families. We will forever have this shared experience, and I welcome you. Yeah, clap. It's one of those nights. Why not? I'd like to bring up Peter Tulte at this moment to talk a little bit more about the Heritage Project.
Putain, il est préparé.
Test it.
Well, good evening or good afternoon to everyone here. So I did want to have Annie touched on this, and just have a special thanks to her with all of her effort for the weekly lecture series. She's done really a terrific job, and this is her brainchild, and we've said go for it. But she's done really a nice job of just weaving together the threads of what makes the character of Taos Ski Valley, and has brought in a collection of people on a weekly basis, be they poets and photographers, craft brewers, to the Stream Restoration Project, to Emergency Mountain Medicine. Ani's brought many facets of our experience together. But this afternoon presentation really touches on a theme I think that's dear and significant to all of us, in that we not only have the voices that participated in the history of Taos Ski Valley, but actually those that crafted the legacy of Taos Ski Valley. And to say the least, this is a unique opportunity. So there is, though, a bittersweet quality to today's presentation. At last autumn's Board of Directors meeting, Mickey announced that he'd be retiring from the board this spring. Initially, our approach was to ignore him. But that didn't work. He insisted. And as a board, we began to think hard about how best to recognize Mickey's role and to not acknowledge his many contributions to this same legacy. Do we name a ski run after him? Do we name a lift, a street? I think Dave came up with a snowcat. None of it seemed to work. And it really was at that point that we met Jason Sikorsky. And Jason is a PhD, well, he's received his PhD from UNM as well as his master's degree from UNM, Department of History, and his dissertation was entitled Impossible Heights, From Mining to Sport in the Mountain West. Jason has done a lot of work on not only the history of New Mexico, but also sport and activity within Western culture, within Rocky Mountain culture. And it was a unique opportunity. We met him, we liked him right away, and we thought the first comment we have is, we got to get him to meet Mickey, we got to make sure this thing works. Because as many of you know, in another life, Mickey would have been an archaeologist, he would have been a historian, he would have been an academic. So we thought, what better way to recognize Mickey's contribution than to marry his background, passion, and skills with Jason's research and academic credentials in order to forge the Taos Ski Valley Heritage Project. And TSV has come forward and we've donated monies in order to make this thing happen. This is very much, and Rick, it's very much an extension of your work on Ski Pioneers. And at this point, I have to say, we don't know what form this will take. Jason's going to start meeting with a lot of folks here, whether this is a archive, a video archive, whether this is a book, how this takes form is something that I think it will be a consequence of the interviews and who we meet, and we'll determine where it should appropriately be housed. Because part of it is trying to collect all of this and then memorialize it for generations to come. I mean, this is a unique opportunity. Not all will be so blessed. This project, it's very much is a work in progress, and it really, it's an opportunity, again, for us to crystallize and solidify what Taos Ski Valley is about. But this evening, it is, for me particularly, and I think for many sitting in this room, an honor to be sitting in front of you all and to have the opportunity to listen to your thoughts, your recollections in common. And it really is something that speaks to the fabric of Taos Ski Valley. And I welcome all of you here, and George, I turn the mic over to you.
I think I'd like to use this one. Maybe I'll get rid of this over here. Thank you, Peter. It's great to be back to Taos. I was born and raised in Taos. I came up here and started skiing in the very early 60s. 3 of the distinguished gentlemen on this panel were my ski coaches. Mickey being my first, Jean the second, and Dadu put up with me for the longest period of time. So I can tell you it is a great honor and extremely humbling to be able to moderate or try to moderate this panel. As Peter mentioned, he didn't know where this was going. That was my question when I was asked to moderate, because any one of these individuals could probably talk for 6 days if you get them started on the history of Taos Ski Valley, and that would just be scratch the surface. So I'm going to try to, and I hate to do it, I may have to cut 1 or 2 off, make them a little shorter than we might normally be as far as their answers, so that we can get through some of these things. Also, as I was trying to write some questions, I wasn't really sure, because I didn't know what direction we wanted to go as to exactly what we're going to turn out with. So we'll kind of jump into it with that. I would first like to acknowledge, and Rick told me that I get a commission on every book we sell, so if you haven't bought it, please go out and buy the book. But it is a tremendous book. It deals with a lot of the history of Taos. It has some of the things you can probably tell, probably some things you couldn't tell. In any event, it's a great book, and the first question I would like to ask Rick is, what motivated you to do this? Okay, your time's up.
I was, Peter talked for 8 minutes, and that was my allotted time.
That's collective.
I was lucky enough to be walking with Ernie when his knees were pretty well gone, and we'd walk up to the Beaver Pond in different times, and I had the idea to say that maybe we should tape his stories and see where we went with that. And I was a lot afraid to even bring up the idea, but he jumped on it. So I set up times to start taping, and we went from there. And the only thing I'd like to say about that is Ernie was very punctual, and wanted things to be punctual, and I was not always so punctual. And the ski school, I was never, anyway. And sometimes I would come up and I'd set a meeting with Ernie for 10 o'clock in the morning, and I would arrive at 5 after. And he would be sitting at the table looking out the window, and it only happened once. And I realized, this guy really wants to put this down. And we did, and it was my honor to be able to do that and to have known all of the people in the ski business that I was lucky enough to know and to weave that story. It's a great history. Thank you very much.
This isn't a question, but probably everyone on the panel up here, and I'm sure Rick, the same situation, has been fired at least once by Ernie. So him being late probably culminated in at least one firing.
Lots of times. Lots of times. Ernie, yeah. You had a...
Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you a question about Ernie and head skis. I think you have a story you could relate to us, maybe?
Head skis.
About the Head Ski Company?
Howard Head.
He wants you to tell their story.
That was before she came to town.
Oh, I see, I see. If not, maybe you could tell us how you first came to Taos.
I met Ernie Blake in Chicago at a ski show. I was working at the German consulate and was interested in skiing in the Rocky Mountains. And so at a ski show, I met Ernie Blake. And he said, "It's good you have an accent because in the ski business, an accent is very helpful." Okay, so I met Ernie and I told him I worked at the German consulate in Chicago. And he said, "Well, I could offer you a job. We need somebody who speaks more languages and can deal with a lot of our skiers, our guests." So he told me what he could pay. And I'm not going to repeat that. However, he promised me beautiful snow and a great mountain and nice weather in New Mexico and excellent food at the St. Bernard, where all the staff ate from Ernie. Okay, so I thought it over not long, and I told the German consulate that I want to go and ski in the Rockies, and then I accepted the offer from Ernie. And I found out I could travel with a car to deliver in Albuquerque, which I did, and then I went on my way and delivered the car in Albuquerque and took the bus to Taos. And Ernie Blake picked me up, which was a big surprise. And then he showed me where I would live, and that was the Chalet Alpina, and that was the little shack underneath the lift. And that's where all the ski workers who worked for Ernie stayed. And it was quite a good community and very small. We could hear noises through the building. But we didn't stay long there, and then I started as a ski instructor, started with the children, and then Ernie saw that I could ski the steep runs, and he thought that was amazing. And, and so I started in the ski school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keeping on that theme, I'd like to just ask for maybe a quick recollection from Walter about how he arrived at Taos and what he thought when he first got here.
I was born in Switzerland and worked for different big companies over there and in Canada. And I went home and changed companies, and it happened so that Ernie was in the process of buying a chairlift from Stedelijk company, and he told me if the deal goes through, they would send me over here to put the lift up. And I didn't come in the box like Mickey likes to say. But I arrived in Santa Fe, and Ernie picked me up and asked me if I knew how to drive a Volkswagen. And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, that's going to solve a lot of problems. And I spent the night at a nice house down in Santa Fe. And they cooked me breakfast in the morning and told me where to go, and I drove up here. And the first guy I met was Lee Warros, Sr. They were mixing concrete at the bottom of Alzern and put it in 5-gallon buckets and hang it on the old Poma lift, and that's how they poured the concrete for the footings for the first chairlift.
Sounds like hard work. Sounds like some hard work there.
Huh?
It's hard work moving the concrete up there.
Yeah, it's a lot easier now with the helicopter. And
Max, how did you end up here?
we used chain pole. It's a big straight tree with the pulley on top, and we would pull the towers up and set them. But I built that first lift, and then at that time I worked for the Swiss company, for the chairlift company, and built number one lift. And then in '63 I built a lift on Sandia Peak. And in '65 I came here again and built number two, and then went back again to put up a lot of lifts back east in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and New York State.
Come on, Walter, there's no skiing out there. Skiing is only in New Mexico.
Okay.
It's the only place you can ski, you know that. I mean,
Well,
look at today with the
anyway,
snow. Let me move on, another question.
Didn't like the climate back there, and so I quit the company. And while I was down there helping build the tram, I was interested in learning to fly, and I quit the company and became a professional pilot for airplanes and helicopters, and but couldn't find a job. They all say, well, you need 2 years experience. And so I called Ernie and see if I could come and work for him here, and they said, sure. But I don't know if he can afford you or not, but we got together, and that's how I got here. And then...
Thank you. Thank you. Max. Max, I understand you're a great mechanic and had something to do with, that's how you got here, is that right? Or is it all teaching
I
skiing?
just wanted you to know that I lived in the Chalet Alpina too with Walter. And we woke up every morning at 5 o'clock because they turned on the Swiss yodel music. I'll never forget that. But I came to Taos from Chicago with my first wife. We stayed in the Thunderbird Lodge, and the ski week at that time was $198. Liftless, room and board. And we were both, my first wife, we were both in Jean-Maï's class, and I asked him one day if there's a possibility I could become an instructor. I said, why don't you talk to Ernie? So I went up to Ernie, and Ernie said, no, I have already 11 starving instructor, I don't need another one. So then he announced on Thursday that he would take a guided tour up to Kachina, and there were people there that had no business. They were not in shape, they couldn't ski well, so the poor ski patrol came down at 6:30 in the afternoon with the stragglers. But I had worked out in Chicago. I walked up and down the Prudential building after work just to be in shape, because at that time I don't think there were too many spas. And Ernie went up there like a bench, and I said, I'm going to die in the process. But he's not going to leave me in the dust. And when we were on top, he offered me a job.